cloud.
Oh, I can see it's recording. There
Oh,
we
cool.
go.
Okay, and then we'll go live. Now I have Hamilton in my brain. Look around, look around. All right, preparing. I wonder, okay, go live. Add a title. Wait. Where do I add the title on? Oh, right here. Okay. Nia
There you
and
go.
I. Okay. We're not live yet, are we? Oh, wait, here we go.
Yes, we are. I can see it.
You can see it on Facebook?
No, I can see it on my screen. It says live on Facebook.
It does? All right, hold on. It's doing something. Why did it work so easily last time? Oh, maybe we are live.
We
Okay.
are live. Yeah, I can see it.
Just making a fool of myself. Hey, Nia.
Hello.
So, Nia Tomlin, tell me, introduce
Oh no,
yourself.
you're frozen.
I'm frozen?
No, you're good now. You were for a second, but now you're good. I'm Nia Tomlin. I'm 16 years old. I'm from St. Pete, Florida, and I'm going into junior year.
Of high
Is
school.
that good?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think that's great. You have one big brother.
I do. I have a brother and a mom and all that good stuff.
And a family and other people. Yeah. So tell me, how do we know each other?
You were my drama teacher from grade 1 to 8, I think.
I don't think I ever got to go into the high school with you. Yeah, yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
from 1 to 8. So that was 7 or 8 years that we worked together, and you helped procure the budding actress I am now.
Budding actress. Do you have any goals to do acting professionally?
Yes, I really do. I would love to have that as a career and be on film. I don't know if I'm suited for the stage because I'm not too big on singing, but I'd love to be a film actor, do movies or TV or commercials, and be in that kind of world. And if I couldn't act, I'd like to produce or be on the making side of films or
You can do
something.
both.
Mhm.
You can absolutely do both. I can say about you, because I've known you since you were a little girl, you are a rare human in the sense of you had a lot of depth really early on. You had maybe what other people would call an old soul. You were always very curious, always wanted to know more. Anytime I gave you any work, any kind of script to work on, you wanted to dive in and do your research on that work. You wanted to know more. You wanted to read the whole play. So it was really lovely for someone like me, a drama teacher, to work with someone like you
Oh,
because
thank you. Yeah, it was, I feel like we had a really great relationship. We vibed well together.
we did vibe well together. Yeah, and I do miss working with you, but it's really good to see your face.
Oh, it's really good to see you too. And I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Me too. So we're going to head into this conversation. We're here today to talk about race in America. We're here today to talk about the very taboo subject of the social justice uprising that's happening right now all around us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's really important to me that I not stay silent. And unfortunately, it's come at me in different ways. Some people are offended by that. Other people think that it's not necessary. But I just my soul is not at rest right now. It's not at peace. So I thought the best thing to do, so I could understand more what's happening, is to talk to my friends of color, my Black
Mm-hmm.
friends, and people that I know, and ask what their life experiences are, what it looks like through their eyes, um, and really see if they had any ideas, because I'm not a person of color. Um, they had any ideas about what we can do as a country, what we can do personally to move forward in a better light. So we're going to move forward in this conversation with clarity. We want to be really clear about what we're saying, with compassion, because I think you and I are on the same page with leading. We try to lead with love.
100%.
So anything that's unsettling to the pair of us is unsettling because we love people and we want them to be treated equally, and we want them to have all the chances they have to speak out about what matters to them. And in kindness, and what was the other thing? It was another word. Clarity, compassion, and this is encourage.
Yes, 100%.
It's very courage to speak about a taboo thing that's a hot button right now. So that's how we're leading today. So with that said, I wanted to talk a little bit about you. You're biracial?
I am, yes. So my mom is Black and my dad is white. So I've actually kind of been able to experience issues like this from both sides and view both perspectives because of just the world I grew up in. And I also go to a private school that is predominantly white. So I move a lot in those circles. So I'm able to connect to my Black side, and I'm able to connect to my white side and kind of see from both perspectives.
Really, really interesting. I have a white girl question for you.
Okay.
It's a bit of an ignorant question, I think. Is it appropriate for me to call you mixed?
I personally feel okay with it, and I feel like that's a person by person basis.
Okay.
Just depending on how they feel in their journey on how they would self-identify. If I were to address myself as anything, I would probably say Black, but being called mixed is not offensive to me in any way. And I also would address myself as mixed, but I kind of feel like if somebody didn't know me, the world would see me as Black. So I just go ahead and say I'm Black.
I was going to ask why you identify first as Black and then white, but it's because that's how you're viewed.
Yeah, I'm perceived that way. So if on a standardized test, if I had to just check one box, which often happens, I just check the Black box.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Your mom, what is her job?
My mom is the deputy mayor of St. Petersburg.
Yes, she is. I love her.
She is a very cool woman.
And your dad, what did he do?
My dad was a outdoors reporter for the Tampa Bay Times, so he reported on fishing and kayaking and all the fun things you could do outdoors. In addition to that, he was a college professor at USF St. Pete, and he taught about outdoor experiences and leadership and all that fun stuff.
I like, real quick, and then we're going to go into the questions, but do you know the story of how they met?
I do, yes. My mom used to be a reporter, and they met at the Tampa Bay Times in an elevator. And my mom says that their souls knew each other. So when they locked eyes, they just knew they were meant to be. And I always think that's like such a cute and sweet story.
It's so sweet. Had either of them dated outside of their race before?
I don't believe so. I've never asked that, but I don't think so. I think it was a new experience for both of them. Because my mom went to an HBCU, which is a historically Black university or college. So I know that she was really immersed in Black culture before she met my dad. So I don't think that either of them had dated outside of their race before they dated each other.
And your dad passed away?
He did, yes, in 2016.
2016. So about 4 years.
4 or 5 years ago, yeah.
Math. That's why I'm a teacher. I don't do math well. So your dad was obviously an ally for the Black community. I mean, his wife was Black, his family was Black, his children Black. How do you think Terry Tomlin would be reacting, would be moving about the world, would be navigating this situation right now?
I think he would not believe it. I think as an ally of the Black community, he'd be very confused as to why it's even a debate, why what's going on is awful, and why things need to change, and how institutionalized racism is affecting Black people, because I think it was very evident to him because he had Black children and a Black son,
right,
especially, and he had a Black wife, and I think that he would just not know what to do. I think he'd be very troubled, and he would feel distressed on what's going on, and how much it's affecting the people that he loved.
Would he be writing about it?
I definitely think so. I think he would be at a point in his life where he would just want to write about his experience and the experience of his children and the experiences of his wife. So I feel like he would have a lot to say about this and definitely be very, very vocal.
I wish I could hear it.
Hmm.
It would be great to hear. Okay, so let's go into these questions. Have you seen this before? If so, at what level? Or have you seen this before, and have you ever seen this at this level? And what does it feel like to you? This is all about your perspective. I really just want to know how Nia feels.
I have seen this before. I saw it with Trayvon Martin in 2012, and then I was only 7 years old, but I understood the impact of what happened. And that night, I remember watching the news with my parents and my dad and my mom sitting me and my brother down and telling us, the impact of what happened and how to interact with people so that something like this could never happen to us, and just the code we had to follow so that we can move safely through the world. And then after Trayvon Martin, I saw it with Philando Castile and Eric Gardner, and now with George Floyd and countless other people who've been victims of institutionalized racism and of just bias that goes on in America. And yeah, so this is not new to me. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Well, first, let me ask what that code looked like. What did your mom and dad say? How are you supposed to move about the world differently?
So growing up as a Black kid, you kind of know a couple of things, like don't go into a store with a big bag and pick something up because oftentimes people will think you're stealing, or don't walk down the street with a hoodie on because that might look suspicious. If you get pulled over by the cops, make sure your hands are on the dashboard and you say, "Hello, my name is Nia Tomlin. I'm this old. I'm going to reach into my glove compartment to get my license and registration. That's all I'm doing. Once I have it, I will hand it to you, and then your hands go back on the dashboard." So it was kind of just tools and tactics to use so that we can move the world safely, so nobody assumed we were up to anything bad and we could just preserve ourselves.
Wow, that's hard for me to hear. I mean, sounds necessary, but my mom and dad never sat me down and told me what to do when a cop pulls me over, other than just be respectful, do what he says. I've never been told to not wear a hoodie.
And it's not a unique experience for me or my brother. This is something that most Black children in America go through. My cousins have gone through it. My friends have gone through it. And it's just the everyday reality of being Black in America.
Oh, okay. The next question is, so you've seen this before. Have you seen this before at this level?
Not to the level that it is right now. Like, I've never seen mass protest, especially when the country is racked with coronavirus. Like, I would have never guessed that while we're being urged to stay inside, so many people would flood the streets in support of Black Lives Matter. And I've never seen Black Lives Matter respected to this extent. Oftentimes when I see it in the media, it's radicalized.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel the reason why this has honestly caught so much traction and has been projected in a positive light is because of the white support. So
wow.
the killing of innocent Black people has been going on in America for hundreds of years. And it kind of feels like once white people were like, "Oh, this is not acceptable. How is this happening?" It was like, "Oh yeah, we got to do something about it," because we've been talking about it for many years. We've been saying, we're dying. We need your help. We need your assistance. We need the laws to change. We need there to be reform in police departments. And then nobody really heard us. And then when this happened with George Floyd, lots of white allies and other allies came, and it got a lot of media traction, and a lot of celebrities spoke out about it. So I've never seen it to this extent where you're like a champion of human rights if you're a Black Lives Matter advocate.
Right. Okay. So for you, is that what it is for you? Is it a champion for human rights, or do you feel like it's a political stance?
I honestly don't feel like it's a political stance because it's a humanitarian issue, not a political issue. I feel like politics is something like, are we going to make a stop sign at the corner of 5th and 2nd? That seems like a political issue to me, or even gun control or something like that. But I feel like saying Black Lives Matter or we need reform is not political. It's just purely human rights.
Okay, great. Me too. I'm there with you as well. Um, let me ask you this before I ask you what this feels like to you. Why do you think George Floyd was the straw that broke the camel's back?
I think it's because how graphic the video was. I think it's because people are recording it now. I think it's because what he was doing did not seem criminal. And the way that he was abused in the video was so shocking and soul shaking that people could
Yeah.
not believe that this is an everyday occurrence in America. It
So
was
up close,
so graphic.
yeah, it was really hard to watch
Hmm.
and really hard to digest.
And it was really hard to hear him repeatedly say, I can't breathe. And then at the end, the thing where he was like, I just want my mom, I think it tapped into something
Yeah,
inside of everybody, that feeling you get when you just feel overwhelmed or you feel like,
that's right.
this is too much and you just want your mom or you want to feel in a safe space. And I feel like when everybody heard that line, everybody understood where he was coming from and understood the pain he was going through.
What does it feel like to you?
To me, it kind of feels like
Oh,
finally you get it. Finally, you're seeing it and you're posting about it and you understand what my life feels like. The uncomfortable month or 5 weeks that people have experienced is kind of the everyday occurrence in my life. The things that you're posting about are statistics I already knew, or statistics that are relevant in my everyday life.
can you
So
say that again? The 5 months that may seem uncomfortable to you as a white
are is my everyday life.
person, not everyday life.
And I said the statistics that are blowing your mind right now are things I already knew. And I've known since I was 10, maybe. And the photos you're seeing of people's lives who were taken unjustly, I knew their names.
Hmm.
I knew their stories. And I know their stories because I have to know them and I have to know why it happened to them. And it's not the fault of anybody, it's the fault of a unjust system. But it's just refreshing to see that people of color and Black people and me and women are not the only people who see it now, aren't the only people who recognize it's an issue, that everybody does. And now the call for reform is so refreshing because now it doesn't feel like an issue I have to fix.
Oh my God, that's great, Nia. You're right. It shouldn't be an issue you have to fix. I mean, your generation is going to change things, and at the end of the talk, we'll talk about what the future would look like if you were in charge. I'm sorry. It's hard for me because I've known you since you were, 10. You say that these are things that you've been dealing with every day, and I just being your teacher and having a white filter and not knowing those statistics or those names, it's hard for me to know that you've lived a day in fear because of the way you look.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that's really hard for me. I will never claim to be colorblind. I'm not. But as a teacher, I got really close to not ever thinking of you kids as, a specific race or the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different type of view.
100%, yeah.
And so that's just hard for me to hear. I'm relieved too that we're all waking up. It's time.
Yeah, it's refreshing.
Um, are you protesting? How do you feel about protesting?
I love protesting. I've not only participated in Black Lives Matter protests, but women's rights protests, climate change protests. So I am constantly on the front line. I love protests. I think it's our right as Americans, and I think it's our duty as Americans when we think something's unjust, whether it's about gun control or women's rights or climate change, that you speak up about it and that you tell people how you feel because it's your responsibility. And the government's supposed to work with us and work for us. So people need to know how you're feeling.
Good, good. And what about rioting and looting then?
I do not condone rioting. I do not condone looting. But I think the best way to explain rioting and looting to people, to white people, is a quote by Martin Luther King, which is, riots are the voice of the unheard. And although that doesn't excuse it, it explains it. It
Okay.
explains that like I said before, when people were not understanding before, they weren't hearing us before. After the killing of Trayvon Martin, there was a huge protest in Orlando, and it didn't catch nearly as much traction as George Floyd did. And although the reason why George Floyd's killing has caught so much attention is because of all of the allies, it's also partly because of the looting, the rioting, and
Right.
that brought attention to it. So I'm not condoning it, but I do understand it, and I do understand this is people saying, we're done. We need you to see us. We need you to hear us. We're screaming. We want you to see what we're talking about.
Are you surprised by the writing?
I am, but I know about the Watts riots and the Detroit riots and the LA riots after Rodney King in 92. So riots aren't a new thing. Riots have existed, and riots often come after racial unrest or political unrest. So knowing that the killing of George Floyd had such an impact on Americans, the rioting kind of seemed like it was going to naturally follow.
So you're the fourth person of color that I've interviewed, and you're the fourth person of color that said this was the natural progression when it came to writing. And I think it's really interesting because as a white person, it never occurred to me that this was the natural thing to happen, or this was the thing that was eventually going to happen if nothing else happened. So it's just interesting. Our perspectives are different. Oh my gosh, my phone. I didn't turn my phone off. Hold please. Okay. Sorry. Are you there? Okay. What do you wish your white friends, you have a lot of white friends.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
What do you wish your white friends could understand at a core level?
So I feel like the best way to explain this is to just explain my life again. Like I said, I'm half white, so half of my family is white.
Right.
And I also go to a private school that is predominantly white. So the world I move in is a white world.
Predominantly white.
And a lot of times, because I move in this world and because I'm half white, people forget that I'm Black. People forget that I experience the world as a Black woman. And although people who know me look at me and they see a mixed person or just their friend, that's not how the world who doesn't know me sees me. The world sees me as a Black woman. So the struggles, I still experience the struggles of a Black woman. When I go into a store to buy pantyhose, oftentimes I can't find the ones in my skin tone. When I was a little girl doing ballet, I was the only person that it was evident I was wearing tights, which can be embarrassing. I don't have Band-Aids that match my skin color. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's also the aspect that they don't recognize of me, that is the pain and the suffering that comes with being Black in America. I don't think they understand how seeing the killing of George Floyd rocked me in my soul, how hearing Tamir Rice died at 12 years old was so, just something I had to deal with and understand and comprehend that is something that can happen in America. That is something that can happen to me. That is something that can happen to my brother. Understanding that when people say Black Lives Matter, they really mean that when women and mothers and sisters see their brothers and their fathers shot down in the street, that is a real experience we're going through. And although I don't know Tamir Rice personally, I didn't know Trayvon Martin, I don't know Eric Gardner, I know them. Yeah. I know who they are. I know them in my community, and I can see my brother in them. I can see my grandpa in them and my uncles. And when I see innocent Black men being killed, I just, it's upsetting to me.
It's very scary. Very scary. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh yeah, no, that's just all I had to say, that even though I walk through the white world and I have the privilege of a white woman, I mean, not of a white woman, but I have the privilege of moving through a white world, I'm not white. And I wish that they could see that and understand that. And it's no fault of their own that they don't, but it's just the truth. It's my reality. And it's just the way I live, and it's the way I've always lived. And it's not new to me that this is the reality.
And that I'm choked up. So like my voice is all blah, blah, blah. If you could sit down each one of your friends and get them to recognize at a core level that you are a Black person moving through this world, you wouldn't be asking them to treat you differently. You would just be asking them to what? Open up their mind about how you are treated differently?
Yeah, just get them to understand, because I feel like if I were to have a conversation with one of my friends and say, you know, what happened to George Floyd could happen to me, I feel like they think there's a distance. They think that, oh no, it couldn't. It could never happen to you. Don't say that about yourself, but it's the truth. That could happen to me, and you don't think it could happen to me because you know me,
Right.
but the man who shot Trayvon Martin didn't know him. So the
Right.
same thing could happen to me because he doesn't know me. People don't people don't know me. People don't know my story. So as much as you love me, other people don't know me the same. So what is happening to people is very likely to happen to me.
That's terrifying. What is insensitive about saying I don't see color or all lives matter at this time?
The insensitivity about I don't see color is simply the fact that that's not what we're talking about.
Okay.
I'm not asking you to not look at me as a Black woman, because
Okay.
that's what I am. I am a Black woman, and there's nothing that can change that. I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm proud that I am a Black woman, and that's my culture, that's my community. That's not the point. So when somebody says I don't see color, it's kind of like, you know, the whole message went over their head.
It sounds like they are putting a band-aid on their own ego or their own,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not what we're doing here.
And the insensitivity about all lives matter is simply that that's an oversimplification of what we're trying to say.
Nice.
We're not degrading the lives of other people. We're not saying that you're not as important, but what we're saying is Black people's lives matter because they have not historically in the past. For 400 years, there's been oppression of Black people, and it's been through the forms of slavery. It's been through the forms of sharecropping. It's been in the form of Jim Crow and segregation. And now it's in the form of the prison industrial complex system or police brutality. So we're saying Black Lives Matter because we need you to recognize it. We're not saying Black Lives Matter because we think that we're more important, but we just want to be part of the narrative. We want you to see us as we see each other. And if
That's Nia, that's a tweetable moment. Saying Black Lives Matter because we want to be part of the narrative. That's brilliant.
I saw a analogy that I've been able to talk to my white friends about, and it kind of got them to see Black Lives Matter in a different light. And it was, if Black Lives Matter was your friend at a birthday party, and it's her birthday,
Okay.
and as she's blowing out her cake, the candles on her cake, somebody says, well, I have a birthday too.
Mm-hmm.
That's the equivalence of all lives matter. We're not saying your birthday is not important. We're not saying that her birthday matters any more than yours.
That
We're
anybody
just saying that
else.
right now, this is the issue we're focusing on. We're
Yeah.
focusing on Black Lives Matter because that's what needs the most attention right now.
Excellent. Thank you. Well done.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So there's a myriad of reasons that I might not be comfortable protesting. COVID would probably be at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm concerned for my well-being. Maybe I'm afraid it's going to turn violent. But if I'm not comfortable protesting, how else can I help? How else can I be effective in helping?
If you're not comfortable protesting, there's a slew of other things you could do.
Yeah.
And it's not the only way that your voice can be heard. There's so many other ways. So protesting, you're using your voice through your feet, and you're marching in the streets, and you're doing that with numbers, but you could also call in to your representative's office and say, this is an issue. You could write, you could vote, which is insane that not every American who has the ability to do it does it, but voting is a really, really important step. And I urge everybody to vote. I urge everybody to register to vote. It's very simple. It's very easy. But that's what you can do. And make sure you know the facts and you know what you're talking about, and use your voice however you can. So if you don't feel comfortable protesting, write, call,
Right? Call, vote,
post, raise awareness,
post.
donate.
Your Instagram has been really great to follow.
Thank you.
I love following you on Instagram. I think not only are you just a beautiful person and you have
Thank you.
really beautiful pictures, you have been very instrumental in educating me, which is interesting because the tables are turned, like I was once your teacher. I feel like a bit like you're my teacher now. And you post a lot about types of racism that I didn't know existed. Environmental racism,
Mm-hmm.
racism within different types of cities and neighborhoods, and so I appreciate that because it's opening up my eyes. I'm just now, I'm going to be 40 this year, and just now, my 39th year, I'm starting to be conscious of who I buy goods and services from.
Mm-hmm.
And based on, am I diversifying that? There is every single profession on earth, whether it be engineering to the arts to baking, is in an excellent manner by a person of color, is
Mm-hmm.
done at the toppest level there can be also by a person of color, and our people of color are experts in everything. And so it's just clicking that I need to it and I think something that you helped me learn, so I want to thank you for this, is that by supporting people of color and their own black owned businesses, that money goes back into the school system, that goes back into better education, it goes back in building up communities. So thank you.
Yeah.
So everyone,
I'm happy you read it, because the best thing you can do to educate yourself is take the resources that your friends who are people of color provide for you, so that you learn things that you didn't know, because a lot of my friends didn't know about redlining, which is real estate racism, or didn't know about environmental racism and all those different things, the prison industrial complex system. And you don't know to know something if it's not ever told you that you need to know it, if that made sense.
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not your fault, right? I would say the one thing that I'm frustrated at right now is people who are unwilling to learn new things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the last person that's gonna like call. We're living in a call out culture right now, right?
We definitely are.
We're living in a call out culture, which is necessary. But I'm the last one to call you out and say you're bad,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not your judge. That's not my job. That's God's job in my belief system. And so the only thing that I get continuously frustrated about are people who are like, I don't believe it's real. I don't believe that Black people are oppressed, and I don't think that there's anything I need to do about it. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something that we can all do about it.
100%. The best thing you could do is learn. That's
Yeah,
just my advice for everybody.
and listen to your Black friends, like we're doing. What are some resources? Now let's talk about learning. What are some resources? That was a good transition.
Yeah.
That I can find to become and remain informed about my own privilege and the plight of those with less advantage.
So privilege is a really interesting thing, because everybody has some sort of privilege. I have privilege being a light-skinned Black woman,
Okay.
because dark-skinned Black women don't have the same privilege as me, and I was able to learn about my privilege through a documentary I watched with my mom, who is a dark-skinned Black woman, and it was issues that I never knew she struggled with, but after watching the documentary, I was able to know. So watching documentaries like The 13th is a really great documentary. It's on Netflix. Reading books. I have read lots of books during this period of time about just different privileges and ways that you can exercise your privilege to speak out for people who are less advantaged. So reading is great. Personal blogs about people's struggles are great.
Okay.
Watching documentaries and movies and TV shows and learning about redlining and social racism and economic racism and environmental racism.
You think you and I both love our social media? Do you think there exists some racism there in social media?
I definitely think a lot of people only target their stuff to the group they are included in, and a lot of times that can be harmful, because if you're not expanding your knowledge and your platform to people of color or white people, if you are a person of color, or the Hispanic community or the LGBT community, if you're straight, it's a disadvantage not only to you but to them, because different perspectives are great and it helps build your thoughts and it helps strengthen your points. So I think if you only target to the people you're like, then it can be detrimental to you and the other person.
Do you think there's a kind and respectful way to go about letting maybe influencers or different campaigns on social media know that you don't see color in their platform. You don't see people of color being represented by their product.
I definitely think you could do it respectfully, like email the company or, DM the person if they're an influencer and say, I love your product, but I just don't see enough people like me. I don't see enough people of color. I don't see enough products in your line that support people of color or for people of color. So
Great.
maybe consider this next time you're advertising or something like that. That definitely is a great way to do it.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go.
Speaking of people, influencers, and people who are famous, you have a famous aunt.
I do. Yes.
Tell us who she is.
Susan Sarandon is my aunt, and she is my like superhero personally because everything I know about activism and about speaking up when you think something is wrong and all the books I've read on activism primarily come from her. And she has helped me become the activist I am today. She helped my dad. She is 14 years his senior.
Oh, is
so
she?
She is, yes.
I didn't know that. A lot of them, right? A lot of siblings.
9, yeah.
I remember coming to your dad's service on the beach that we had after he passed. I was like, "Whoa, there's a lot of them."
Yes, there are 9 Tomlins currently.
9 Tomlins.
But she taught him everything she knows, so she was a mentor to him, and then he passed that knowledge on to me, and we just help each other grow. And we've had a lot of conversations during this time, and she's talking to me about, how I feel and what I think. And I wrote something on my Instagram and she shared it with her friends, and it was a perspective that she'd never had before. So we grow with each other.
That's really lovely. Do you have a favorite movie that she's in?
I have like a couple, but growing up we weren't allowed to watch any movies where she like cursed or she died in. Sure. So like that's a lot of iconic movies. Like I couldn't watch Thelma and Louise.
Oh, come on.
So a lot of movies I love by her are kind of like the younger movies. So like Enchanted, I loved, and Little Women. Those are like my top 2 favorites.
Have you seen Rocky Horror Picture Show?
I have not.
What? Really?
Yes, I've not seen it.
So good.
Yes, okay. I know. I keep getting told to watch it, but I have not watched it yet. I think I'm going to wait till Halloween because I feel like it's kind of a Halloween movie.
It is. It's very... we're going to go off topic just for a second, and only the theater people are going to get this part. But do you remember how much I loved Bat Boy the musical?
Mm-hmm.
And how it was so bizarre and weird and like kind of a dark. It's the same kind of cult following that like Bat Boy would have, where it's like dark and weird and
kind of theatrical and whimsical and
so theatrical, whimsical, makes no sense. There's blood, there's creatures there. That's why it's so good, because it's so out. Hi, Susan Sarandon, if you're watching. Hello, we love you. I'm so glad that you have an aunt that's an activist who is white, because I think that speaks volumes to even just like your grandparents and how they raised your dad, and probably even to why your dad fell in love with your mom so quickly.
Yes, because my mom's also a big activist. Like she brought me to almost all of the protests I've ever been to. When there was the women's rights protest in or march, the women's march in DC in 2016, my mom made sure that me and my brother could get there and see it and experience it. So I've grown up in an activist culture.
You're gonna be you're already a badass, but you as a woman,
Thank you.
I mean, come on, it's gonna be really cool to watch. Okay, what are some things that I can do as a white woman? What are some things that I can move about the world doing that I might take for advantage, that I might take granted for, that you have to think twice about doing as a Black woman?
There's the obvious things that are like going into a store with a big bag. I probably would never do that. From the time I was a little child, like 3 or 2, or as from the moment I could walk on my own. Whenever I went into a store with my mom or my grandma, my mom and grandma would be like, do not pick anything up, do not touch it, only touch it if you're going to buy it.
Wow.
Otherwise, it might seem fishy, it might seem weird, and oftentimes I've been in nicer stores where workers have followed me around and consistently asked me, oh, is there anything I can help you with? What are you in here looking for today?
Wow,
And if
really?
I didn't have a specific thing I was looking for, I was kind of dismissed, like, oh, okay, sorry. So that is something I experience. Also, hair products are very hard to find in the grocery store. Oftentimes, my white friends can go in there into the grocery store, Publix or Walgreens or Walmart or whatever, and go to the shelf and quickly pull off anything. But I have to look and see if it is right for black hair, if it will damage my hair, if it has frizz control. So that's something I have to consider. And then there's things that are a little less evident to white people that I feel like even if they are woke, they wouldn't recognize.
Okay.
A lot of times seeing things like Confederate flags or the word Dixie is kind of like a sign to me, like the laws changed, but we didn't.
Oh, wow, Nia.
Like
Wow,
this is what we're doing here. So I,
that's what we're
you know,
doing.
if I saw a place that had a Confederate flag, I wouldn't really feel comfortable walking in when I have friends who wouldn't think twice about it.
Yeah.
And then also I feel like the biggest thing that gets a lot of people goes over a lot of people's head is genealogy.
Okay.
So I'm, like I've said, I'm half white and I know all about my dad's history. I know that my grandmother's Italian and I love that part of me. I love cooking Italian food and listening to music and
Oh,
experiencing the culture and learning about the history. I'm obsessed with it. And I love that I know that part of me. And I love that I know my grandma has these stories about Italy and about her grandpa and about the little town she came from, Ragusa, Sicily. So I love that part of me. And my mom's side, I can't say the same. There's really no inclination about where my mom's side came from other than the fact of like what state the slaves she's descended from are from.
wow. You know what? You're right. That's never occurred to me.
And on Heritage Day or Cultural Day, I can go into flag or sharing and be like, I'm Italian. And I can express that part of me. And I have that privilege because I'm half white and I know that part of
Huh.
me. But if somebody who is black, completely black, would not know. They have no idea what their heritage is.
Wow.
And
Okay.
they have no idea what the culture is. And I've been to Africa before. I went when I was in eighth grade.
Okay.
And I went to all these different countries in Africa. And even though I don't know specifically where I'm from, I could connect to it on a like spiritual
On
level. I
spiritual
felt
level.
it. And
Yeah.
I also think it's a little bit of a disadvantage, the fact that, white people can go back like 7 generations and know that their grandpa was a surgeon or a writer or a professor.
Yeah.
And black people don't have that advantage. They can go back 7 generations and their ancestors were slave. And
I've
the sad thing about that was people weren't taken from Africa as slaves. They were taken as mothers and fathers and surgeons and doctors and poets and chiefs. And that part of our history has been deprived from us. And
yeah.
that part of our culture we can't experience. And Black excellence has kind of been stifled for many generations. And it wasn't until recently that it was celebrated, Black
Yeah.
culture. So that's why holidays like Juneteenth and Kwanzaa are so important to Black communities, because it is a time of year that the part of us that we don't know is celebrated, and we can just experience togetherness and community even though we don't know where we're from.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for educating me on that. That's not something I've ever thought about. Um, it's going to be a struggle for my son who's adopted because we don't know much. We don't know anything really about his heritage. And I've thought about that. I've thought about it in that sense, but I've never
Mhm.
thought about it in the sense of, I know who my biological parents are, and
Mhm.
they don't know, because it was taken from them and wiped away from the history books. That's really, really sad.
Mhm.
So, how long have we been talking? I wonder.
43 minutes, I think.
You can see it? Okay. I don't
I
see
just
it.
see the clock.
Oh, okay, great. Oh, yeah, we could just look at the clock. So you're 16,
I am, yes.
going into your junior year. You have a big, big, wide life in front of you. If we could start changing something now, what would the future look like? What would the ideal future look like to you? Realistically, let's be realistic, knowing that people are people, knowing that hate exists.
I think if people now are committed to starting a conversation that can be uncomfortable and are committed to, going a little bit outside of their comfort zone and realizing that race isn't a straight line. It can be messy, it can be uncomfortable, it can be, hurtful at sometimes, because when you recognize something that you do is inappropriate or is, I don't know how to say it, like not racist, but you ignorantly support something. And I mean ignorant in the sense that you don't know, not in a negative connotation, but ignorant that you just simply do not know yet.
Like I was ignorant to you feeling uncomfortable on Heritage Day because you don't know your mother's heritage. I was ignorant of that until you taught me that. So you're not saying ignorant like you're ignorant. You're not using it as like a negative name calling.
Yeah, no negative connotation, just simply the fact that you don't know.
Just that you don't know.
So when people are ignorant to things, they, can say something that is completely insensitive to a Black person or a person of color or LGBTQIA or any of those marginalized groups.
Yeah.
And when you just have to be able to have a conversation when somebody says, that was hurtful, take it and know it was from a place of love and light and nothing against you as a person. Just this is how we move forward in the world.
So what would be the best way for me if I said something to you that was offensive? If we were having a conversation and I said to you, I believe all lives matter. I don't know what the big deal is. How then, and you said that's offensive to me, how then can I ask, do I just say to you then, well, how can I talk about it then? I think that one of the problems is because it's not, as a white woman, because of course it's affecting me, right? But it's not in front of my face the same way it's in front of your face. So because it's inconvenient to talk about how it's affecting me, and because I can still sort of move about my day-to-day life without it affecting my job, without it affecting the way that I walk into a store or buy a hair product, then it's inconvenient maybe for me to talk about. And I'm not saying we're all selfish, human nature is selfish, right? So how then can I get over myself enough to be brought down to a level to recognize that I might be saying ignorant things and I don't have that intention?
I definitely don't think it's wrong to ask, why is this offensive? Because like I said, learning is an important part. I had to have that conversation with one of my friends who didn't think the Confederate flag was offensive. And then I had to explain to them the antebellum period was not something that I look back on, or my mother or my grandmother or my great grandmother would have looked back on and thought of the good old days or happiness and easygoingness. That's not something that I would have thought of. And then once they saw, oh, to you, that's a correlation to slavery, that's a correlation to oppression, they were like, okay. And the switch flipped in their head. So I definitely think that it's fine to ask, why is this offensive? If it's coming from a good place. And then I think once you're explained to you it's offensive, you just need to put yourself in their shoes and understand that that was something that was triggering, because you can't really determine what's offensive to another person. And you can't say to somebody else, well, that's not offensive, because if they've told you it is, that's their truth.
That's exactly right, Nia. Can you say that again? You can't determine what's offensive to another person.
Somebody else. Because if they've said it's offensive, that's their truth and that's how they feel. And you just have to be respectful of that. And it's all needs to be rooted in respect.
Yes, it all needs to be rooted in respect. That's exactly right. And that's why I wanted to have these conversations with my Black friends, because I don't know what I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I am very ignorant to your way of life. I am very ignorant to systematic racism, and I am trying to learn. But the easiest way for me to learn is to ask you your stories about your life and what it looks like and how, excuse me, and how I can be an ally for you.
Mm-hmm.
So as we leave this conversation, what are some things, if people were to reach out to you personally, let's say on your Instagram, what's your Instagram handle?
My Instagram, one second, I have to look. I don't know it exactly.
I think it's your name with an underscore. It
is just Nia Tomlin, no space.
Nia Tomalin, no space. Oh, just your name.
Just straight Nia Tomlin, yes.
Nia-Tomalin.
Yes.
I was looking at it at the bottom of the screen. Okay. So if someone was to reach out to you, would you be open to having a conversation with them about things that you're posting as long as they're respectful?
I 100% would, because like you said, a lot of the things I'm posting are things that people aren't aware of. And I've had people already who follow me, reach out and say, oh, is this really going on? Am I contributing to this? What are some suggestions you have? Or I didn't know about this. Could you explain it more in depth? Or what are more resources I could go to understand this better? So I 100% am open to having that conversation with people.
What would you say to people if they said, well, she's just a kid. I'm uncomfortable talking to her. She's a high school kid.
I don't really feel like that's a valid argument because I live in that experience. I'm a Black person in America, and no matter my age, I experience what Black people experience.
Yeah.
And I also think that my perspective is unique as a young person
Yeah.
because I haven't experienced years of oppression. I'm only 16.
Right.
So I'm kind of looking at the world with new eyes, and I can grow, and I want to grow with people, and I want people to grow with me. So I 100% believe that my opinion and my perspective is valid in what I'm saying.
So valid. You're such an intelligent young woman.
Thank you.
If you don't become a film actress, will you run for president?
I feel like president is not the gig for me. I might become like a congresswoman or something.
You would be great at it.
Thank you.
I'm going to end this talk the same way that Zeke says goodbye to his friends. Zeke is for those of you that don't know, Zeke is my 4-year-old son. I feel like if you're watching this, you probably know that. I'm very open about him. And he says to all of his friends, no matter the gender, the color, he says, I love your heart.
Aww,
Yeah.
that is so sweet.
And I do. I love your heart, Nia.
Thank you. I love your heart.
Thank you. It's been an honor to watch you grow into the woman you are today.
Thank you. I just had so much fun doing this, and I felt like it was kind of informational for me as well. And I felt like this is a really great space to be able to say this because oftentimes young people aren't given a platform to say what they want. And when they do, it's only through Instagram or posts that other people have shared. So having this experience has been really special to me. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd love to talk again. Maybe we can revisit it in a couple of months, see where the world is. You'll be back to school, see how, how the social justice uprising is affecting your day-to-day school life, see what how your friends are talking to you. I always said to people who asked, like, how could you work with middle school kids? You were a middle school kid, when I worked at the elementary. I always said, listen, they're some of the smartest people I know because they're learning everything new and their perspective is so different than mine. You get jaded as you get older. You're like crotchety and jaded. To have somebody like you be so excited about changing the world for the better is really inspiring to me. So I'm really grateful to have spoken to you today. I'm really grateful that other people get to listen to you talk. And
thank you. I'm grateful for this experience too. So thank you so much for having me and having this conversation.
And let me know if I can do anything to help support you, okay?
100%. All right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you. How do I? Oh,